Years before Capcom or Nintendo made hits by putting their franchise players together in fighting games, SNK hit on the idea. In 1994, they released The King of Fighters 94, a team fighting game seeing characters from not only their latest fighting games like Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting, but their legacy games like Ikari Warriors and Psycho Soldier. This series would become SNK's bread and butter, arguably their best known and most enduring franchise, and in 1998 they would make the first Dream Match installment, one that threw out the story of the game, such as it is, to include basically every character seen in the series so far for a non-canon slugfest. I'm Joe, this is Same Name Different Game Gaiden, and in this episode we'll talk about how the Dream Match never ends. When it comes to your favorite King of Fighters game, most folks, especially the older fans like me, fall into one of two categories: 98 or 2002. This makes sense, as these are the two Dream Match entries, the games that ignore the overarching story of the series to just cram in a bunch of fan-favorite characters, even if canon says they're technically dead. And for my part, I'm a 98 guy, and boy, has this game been ported and re-released a bunch of times. And since it's the summer of the 100 mega shock, we're starting, of course, with the Neo-Geo version. Released in 1998, obviously, and carrying the subtitle of Dream Match Never Ends in Japan and The Slugfest in Western territories, this game came a bit past the midpoint of the Neo-Geo's lifespan, but was embraced heartily at the time by the fanbase, including practically every character seen in the series so far, even bringing back the American sports team who hadn't been seen since the first game in the series. They also wouldn't be seen again, as it turns out, but hey, I don't think the full roster for KOF 15 has been revealed yet, so keep hope alive, Lucky Glauber fans. This game also includes so-called EX versions of several characters, who are variations from other games using different movesets. These can be accessed by holding the start button before selecting your character, and include the Real Bout Fatal Fury version of Terry, the Art of Fighting version of Robert, the KOF 95 version of Kyo, among others. And upon choosing a character, you get to pick from two styles, Advanced and Extra. These change how your super moves work, your dodge style, your dash style, and more. Most high-level players consider Extra to be useless, as you can't escape throws using this style, but casual players, which definitely includes me, may prefer some things about it. Given the nature of SNDG Gaiden, I'm not going to get super deep into the balancing and systems of the game. Besides, I'm absolutely a scrub, and if you want deep analysis on tier lists and stuff, you probably know by now not to come to me for that. But if you, like most people, are a filthy casual, let me run down the differences on the subsequent versions for you. The first port of this game was to the PlayStation, released only in Japan on March 25th, 1999. The port was done primarily by Yume Kobo, a joint dev team created by SNK and Takara, who'd handled a lot of the Neo-Geo ports to 16-bit systems. We'll be talking about Takara in the next full episode of SNDG. This version is pretty faithful to the Neo-Geo and adds a bonus art gallery. It does seem to be missing at least a few frames of animation, but the biggest problem here is that it has interminable load times, and not just between fights, but if you're playing on the standard 3-on-3 mode, between every round. And while, yes, that is mitigated in the single fight mode, not available in the MVS version on the Neo-Geo, but present in the AES Home Neo-Geo version, I don't know anyone who likes to play KOF that way. Overall, it's fine. if the only way you have to play this game would somehow be on PS1. In 1999, the game hit the Sega Dreamcast, courtesy of SNK themselves. This time, it's known as King of Fighters Dream Match 1999, which is a slightly confusing title, and at the time, I didn't realize that it was KOF 98 and not a port of the sequel. But this is much more than just a simple port job. Not only are some elements of the character selection and in-match HUD changed, the backgrounds have been recreated with 3D elements, which I'd argue doesn't look as good now as the original pixel art, but you can't say it's a lazy port. This version also adds an anime intro featuring Kyo and Iori fighting in an alley, as well as a remixed soundtrack. It can use the now rare and expensive Dreamcast to Neo-Geo Pocket link cable to unlock some art assets, but that's probably not worth over $100 for just that cable. From a gameplay perspective, nothing has changed. It's the same solid game you've come to expect. No console-exclusive characters or anything like that. My one gripe about this version is that it's not compatible with the Dreamcast VGA output natively. This era of pixel art looks fantastic at 480p, but without a fan-made patch applied, it's just not to be with this one. In 2008, for the game's 10th anniversary, King of Fighters 98 Ultimate Match was released in arcades and on PS2, with a version for Xbox Live Arcade on 360 shortly after in 2009. The PS2 version has 3D backgrounds, with an option to go back to the original 2D ones, but I unfortunately can't show you that because I don't have that version. But most of what I have to say applies to the one I do have, King of Fighters 98 Ultimate Match Final, a rebalanced update to the original Ultimate Match. This one lacks the 3D backgrounds, but like I said about the Dreamcast port, I think the classic 2D art has aged better anyways. Ultimate Match most notably added even more characters, including bosses from other games in the series, Orochi and Gonets, who can be seen as final bosses in the single player, not just Omega Rugal, as well as a boss team featuring Geese and Krauser from Fatal Fury and Mr. Big from Art of Fighting. Plus, Eiji and Kasumi Toto from the Art of Fighting series are now on a team with KOF stalwart Shingo, who was a solo character in the original 98. It also adds new EX characters for Blue Mary and Yamazaki, and there's a new style option, Ultimate, which lets you select what type of super meter, dash, and dodge you use. This one also has a pretty sizable overhaul to the HUD elements, as well as a new opening sequence and the option to watch the Dreamcast anime intro. Another remix soundtrack appears here alongside the original Neo-Geo soundtrack. And speaking of original Neo-Geo stuff, the entire AES game is available here. If you want some of that original Neo-Geo slugfest goodness, you have the option. Also, a fairly minor thing, but I do have to give them props for making some changes to the classic backgrounds. Some characters appeared in stages as little cameos, but now they're playable. The most notable example I can think of is the New York stage. In the original game, Mr. Big is seen in the background, but since Mr. Big is now on the classic boss team, he's taken out of that stage. As are the Twin Towers, which I'm not surprised by. Could have been seen as a little insensitive to leave them in, but the game is still called King of Fighters 98. It presumably takes place in 1998, and the towers were still there in 1998. But like I said, it's understandable to err on the side of caution and just take them out if you're editing backgrounds anyways. On this one, it's pretty easy to make a recommendation. Ultimate Match Final gets the nod from me, for sure. It's got the biggest roster, it's the most accessible in modern times, and it includes the original Neo-Geo version. There's no reason to go with any other version unless you have a Neo-Geo Pocket and want to earn some sweet unlockables in King of Fighters R2. Then I suppose the Dreamcast would be there. But come on, Ultimate Match Final is like $13, and you just can't miss with it. And that does it. But come back next time, because in the forthcoming episode of SNDG proper, I'll be looking at the history of SNK's fighting empire, and one particular game with a whole lot of ports. See you then. Hey folks, it's Joe. Thanks so much for watching me talk about the best King of Fighters game. If you liked the show, please do all the things everyone on YouTube asks you to do. Like, subscribe, and comment below with your favorite SNK fighting game. If you really liked it, consider supporting the channel more directly via Patreon or YouTube membership. For just $1 per video, you can get early access to new videos, as well as polls on upcoming videos, your name here with these cool people, and more. There are also affiliate and merch links in the description, as well as Ko-Fi for one-time tips. If you want more Neo-Geo, on the left is the playlist for the Summer of the 100 Mega Shock, and on the right is my video for King of the Monsters 2.